Well, everybody, Simon and I have been trying to do this for a couple years, and I got COVID and had to cancel, and then life happened, and business is happening for you again, and everything's back to normal. Welcome, Simon, to the Flower Podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. It is so lovely to finally be seeing and chatting with you and for everybody to be in on this conversation. I'm really excited and hugely thrilled.
Oh, well, thank you. And I am as well. You do so much, and I've seen your let me see if you phrase it this way, your floral fabulousness and hands everywhere, from the west coast of the US to the all over the UK. And I'm just excited. So we always like to start at the beginning, and just kind of briefly, how did you find your way into flowers?
Gosh, it's all I've ever wanted to do since the age of 7, and I'm 57 now. Actually, am I 58? I'm 58 now. So I was born and brought up in Warwick, which is in the middle of England, near Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare was born. And one bank holiday weekend in August, my mum needed something to do with me, so she took me and my sister to the local park, which we would never normally do, and there was a huge tent, and I kept badgering, wanting to go in. So we went in, and it was the local Horticultural and Allotment Society flower show. And I was just mesmerized, totally mesmerized by every aspect of it. The smell, that typical old-fashioned village marquee made of rope, made of canvas with a grass floor, and within it, chrysanthemums, giant marrows, long leeks, apple pies, wine, dahlias, and junior floral art, which were things like miniature gardens and saucer posies and an animal made from vegetables. And then also the floral art, which was the thing that really got me. And this was the mid-late 70s. So the floral art was fairly old school, conventional. And I just thought, wow. And I was blown away by it. And I went home and got a sheet and put it over the washing line in my parents' garden and made my own tent, and then went round and made a miniature garden, a saucer posy, all with flowers and bits picked from the garden. And ever since then, all I've ever wanted to do is work with flowers. And 50 something years later, I'm really lucky because that's what I do.
That's amazing. What a gift. What a gift to be able to carry that through. I mean, just to know early on and to just enjoy every facet of it. That's incredible.
And I was so lucky because I went to an all boys school in the 70s and 80s, where there wasn't a lot of empathy and understanding for someone who wanted to do anything other than be a doctor, be a lawyer, go into the military, or be a sportsman. I wanted to do none of those. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I sort of assumed school careers advice was something where you would just go into a room, tell people what you wanted to do, and they would assist you. Well, it was quite challenging because an all boys school, me doing flowers was difficult. But as a gay man living and having been born and brought up through the 70s and 80s, all of that adds layers of armor. It builds a carapace. It shouldn't. I think life is a weeny bit easier in some places now, but life's hard, life's tough. We all get some hard knocks. So it was a great way of making me realize I really did want to do this, because I had to fight. I had to really push and
Mm.
fight. And my parents had paid for my education from the age of 7 till I was 18, which was a big stretch for them. I never asked for it, but at age 7, they decided that's what was going to happen. So they had decided they wanted more for their money, their words, never mine, than a mere florist, again, their words. So
Hmm.
I did agree, and I went and did a humanities degree course up in the north of England. I did it for a year. It was great fun. I think going to university or college is a great way to leave home. It's a great way to meet other people and realize that you have to rub along with people from all walks of life, from all cultures and backgrounds. And I loved it for a year, but I knew that it was a total waste of my time because I wanted to be a florist. So after the first year, I said to them, right, the deal was I went and tried it. Don't want to do it. I'm going to London to be a florist. And I thought I would be in London for 6 months and learn a little bit of London polish and then go back to Warwickshire and start a business. But I'm still in London. I've yet to get back to Warwickshire.
Is that because you haven't learned polish yet, or is that because?
I think, yeah, I'm still pretty unpolished at times. A lot of people say very.
Well, what an amazing place to learn floristry, to learn an art. I mean, there must have been some amazing businesses in London at that time. Who did you start with?
Well, I actually, before that, so age 7, I wanted to be a florist. The lady who lived next door, but two to my parents, Norma, she used to teach City and Guild flower arranging in the UK
Oh,
in a local college. And she used to do friends' weddings at the weekend. So I would go and sit in her garage, which was her workroom, and I would help her in inverted commas. But actually, it was the most amazing apprenticeship. And it was proper old school 1970s and 1980s floristry. So I can wire anything you wish. I can make a beautiful Malmaison bouquet. I can do all of that stuff that nowadays has become a bit of a dying art. And I find that
truly.
really sad, but it's very hard. Being a flower shop is so difficult these days. So the opportunity for apprenticeships is almost non-existent here in the UK. But I was lucky to have Norma as my teacher. And then I came to work in London, and there was a man called Robert Day who had a shop on the Pimlico Road. And this was the 80s by then. And Lady Diana was used to buy her knickers and bras in the shop opposite where I worked. And it was at the time when she was always being followed by paparazzi. And we knew when she was near because you'd hear the screech of all these motorbikes stopping and see her diving into the shop. But it was the 80s. It was a time of conspicuous consumerism. Clients thought nothing of coming in and spending £500 on a bowl of lily of the valley to send to say, looking forward to having lunch with you, or thank you for dinner last night. And I was on £80 a week. It was another world for a boy from Warwick, but it was amazing.
Wow. Wow, that is truly amazing. And those were days uh things have changed a bit. Um
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean,
we
I'm
could,
lucky. I still, I work in London. It's a rarefied sector that I work in. I'm incredibly lucky, and I have a huge understanding that I'm in a very, very privileged position, which is why I try and help fly the flag for florists around the world and in the UK in particular, because it is very difficult. It's hard to make a living. You have to have dedication, you have to be a creative, and you have to be someone that is driven to create beauty rather than wanting to earn large sums of money.
mm,
But it is one of the most rewarding, satisfying jobs. And the people I have met and meet and continue to meet and work with are the most incredible people ever. I don't think there's a day goes by I don't learn something from one of them. I'm so, so lucky.
mm. Well, you do have a varied repertoire of floral expertise and experiences. I know that you've done work for the royal family. I know you've done movies. I know you were on the HBO Full Bloom series, which I loved. And it was great to see a lot of people I knew actually participate in that. It was, you've done so much. So I'm not sure where to begin. So let's start with, let's start with, let's start with the movies. How did you get involved in that? Because in the States, that's kind of a big thing. People want to get into the movie gig because they feel like there's a lot of money there. And I'm not sure about that, but I just curious how it is there.
I was working for Robert Day in the Pimlico Road in the 80s, and then it was mostly doing dried flowers, a lot of the work he did, and I thought I'd like to go and work with fresh flowers. So I moved to Pulbrook and Gould, and I was at Pulbrook and Gould for a while, and then I sort of realized I think I can do most of this now. I know it. I'm not going to say I knew it all. I knew how to do most of what I was needing to do on a daily basis. And I liked the idea of becoming a freelance florist to work for a whole variety of different people in London,
Sure.
to pick up and learn different styles, to meet different people, to just not be stuck in a shop every day. So I decided to be a freelance florist. And in the week before I was starting my freelance work, I was asked by a friend of a friend to go and arrange a whole load of lilies in a in a church for a memorial service in London. And I got there, and there was a lady putting out candlesticks and candles and things, and she was watching me create these arrangements of lilies. And she said to me, "Oh, I'd love to do what you do." And I said, "What do you do?" And she said, "Oh, I'm a set dresser." And I said, "Oh God, I'd love to do that. That must be such fun." Now, this is the mid-late 80s when all those merchant ivory films were happening, all of which were exquisitely beautiful and had inspired every television commercial, certainly within the UK, to be made in a very similar genre. So she said to me, "I'm actually filming a commercial week after next. Would you like to help me on it?" Well, I was in like a shot. And it became one of the most magical learning curves and experiences for me, because I was working on television commercials that were like mini films. I would have 6 weeks to do the research on finding correct historical flowers from 1854 to put along a dinner party for an insurance company's commercial that was being filmed in a stately home. And it was just, so I would do the research. This is before there were computers and internet. So you
Right.
sat in a library with books and you did your research, and it's that I adore. So I did that, and then I would make the arrangements, be on set. And being on set is the most fascinating discipline for being an event florist, because you stand around doing nothing for a very long time until they need you immediately and they really want you to do 30 minutes work in 10 minutes. And it was just a spectacular learning curve, having to manage budgets, creating arrangements that weren't necessarily to my taste or style, but suited a venue and a place, understanding about learning scale, speed, um, being able to make something up on the hoof when suddenly the director says, "I need 4 more arrangements," and you've only been told you need 3. All of that was the best experience. And I did loads and loads of different commercials. And then I did some films, bits and pieces. So The Wings of the Dove, I did Where Angels Fear to Tread. I did the flowers on those. And then I did a TV commercial with Henson's, the guys who created the Muppets, those amazing, amazing puppets. And it was a lawnmower commercial in the UK called The Garden Lends a Hand. And all these animatronic plants made by Henson's Creature Shop were part of it. And we were shooting it for 2 months in a set. And I
Two
built a garden.
months.
2 months. It was a series of about 4 commercials, and it was like being on a film. And whilst it was being filmed, they were also filming the Muppet Christmas Carol in the studio next door. So I would get to go in and see some of that happening. So I got to know all the guys from Henson's very, very well. And then very sadly, a few months later, Jim Henson died very suddenly,
Mm.
and he died in America. And New York had the most amazing memorial service for him. So London wanted to have an equal memorial service. And I was asked to do the flowers for it by Henson's, because I'd been working alongside them. And I said, "Where is it?" And they said, "St. Paul's." And I said, "Oh, St. Paul's, Knightsbridge, that gorgeous, elegant Georgian church, so little and exquisite." And they said, "No, no, St. Paul's Cathedral." And I was like, "Ah, okay." So that was just the most amazing opportunity to create decor in scale that fits St. Paul's Cathedral when it's maxed out with people, and for such a poignant and iconic occasion that also was incredibly left field, because there was nothing conventional about Jim Henson. He was the most amazing creative man. And I didn't want it to feel like every other memorial service with huge, vast urns of flowers everywhere. So he lived near Hampstead Heath in London, which is a beautiful piece of parkland. And he walked there every day with his dog and his wife. So I turfed the aisles, and I had park benches and stumps and trees. And the only flowers I had were foxgloves, because we just literally recreated Hampstead Heath. and Big Bird walked down the aisle, and it was a magical thing to be asked to do. And then a few months later, a film was being made, and there was a man involved with it called Duncan Kenworthy, and he was working with Henson's, and he set up a company called Working Title, and the film they were working on was called Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Oh yeah.
And he said to the art director, if you need any flowers on the film, you should talk to Simon. So they did. And I was originally going to do one wedding, and I ended up doing every flower for every wedding and the funeral. And after that, Hugh Grant was at an award ceremony and famously said, I think the florist made the most money out of Four Weddings and a Funeral. I didn't, but they were very generous. They sent us each a bonus check because it was such a successful film. But that got me loads of publicity, and that led to real weddings and parties and whatever. And on it goes. So that is it. That is the film story that made me who I am today.
Insane. Well, that's incredible. So your business today is primarily events and weddings. Is that true?
We have no retail at all. We do no retail. So we are based in Railway Arches here in sunny South London, where I'm talking. So if every now and then there's an odd, strange noise, it's a train thundering overhead. But we're based in South London, and we're really lucky. We work in incredible venues all across London. And I'm really lucky I get to work all around the world creating flowers. And a lot of the London museums and galleries that many people listening will be very familiar with, at 6 o'clock when they close, they become another whole world because they become venues and event spaces. And it's a really important way for them to raise revenue and funding, because here in the UK, the Arts Council has slashed a lot of grants. So as with most cultural establishments, funding is always an issue. And
Sure.
so a lot of the museums and galleries now have a corporate program where corporate clients and bankers will pay a certain amount of money to have an event, a dinner, a drinks reception within the spaces, which are beautiful. They have a private view of an exhibition that's current. And so quite often we are standing outside museums at 6 o'clock in the evening, waiting for the last member of the public to leave. And then me and the production team will go in the space of 20 minutes, we can set dinner up for 400 people. It's amazing. It's spectacular. And it's the most wonderful adrenaline rush.
Wow. Well, I mean, that is such a short window of time. It must be incredibly organized to just go right in and get right to it. That's an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, it's what I love is the whole process. So designing an arrangement. So quite often we're in vast spaces. So we work a lot at the Royal Opera House. And when they had their last gala for their new production of Swan Lake, the final act of Swan Lake is 22 minutes. And we set up a dinner for 400 people within the Paul Hamlin Hall. So that means we have to carry everything up a flight of stairs. We set up a dinner that was, I think, about 25 tables, each of which had a 4-meter tall palm tree in the center of it, and then a whole assortment of botanicals at the base. And it's one of my proudest moments ever to create that. And what I love is the whole process of working out what's doable, how we make it doable, how we pre-prep it here within the workroom, transport it, have it outside, get it in, get it assembled and on the tables. And I have just a brilliant team who work with me and adore the adrenaline rush almost as much as me, probably not quite.
And it's funny you say that because I think that's really true. It's almost like I know for myself, having worked in flowers for many years, I always love the change of the seasons, what's new, what's available, what's not, just all that drama. But then when the mad rush for a holiday and all the volumes triple or quadruple and it's crazy. It's like, yeah, I mean, I can see being the adrenaline rush being a junkie or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a terrifying white knuckle ride of joy, because as you turn and walk out of the room, you just think, I'm not going to say the rudest word I was going to say. You just think, golly, that is incredible. And aren't I lucky to work in a world where it's possible, where we're able to do that?
Yes.
That's the thing that's so brilliant. I'm so lucky to have clients that give me that opportunity and to work in venues where we have the option of creating things on such a scale.
Hmm. Well, I know before we started, I mentioned that Johnny had sent me some images that I had not seen yet. And I think some of those things, it's like the work you do is so diversified. And I think and this seems like a very cliche question, but where do you find inspiration? Because the work, like I said, the work you do, it's no two things are the same. I mean, it's really incredible.
Well, you're kind to say that. I think one of the things that I find incredibly inspirational is the fact that here in the UK, our seasons change quite
Mhm.
dramatically. So I'm talking to you now towards the end of December, and we've still, as I was driving around today, there's a lot of trees still with leaves on because we've not had a lot of cold weather. So we've still got quite an autumnal palette here in London, which is a bit cooler than the north of England. But to me, that feels a bit jarring because by now I want to see naked twiggery. I want to see the gloss of Eleagnis. I want to see shiny camellia leaves. I want to see all the evergreens and the pines. I'm sort of done with the autumn now. Um, and so I love that cycle because I'm almost up to here with pine. I'm definitely up to here with amaryllis. Um, and it will be exciting that any minute now, well, I've seen them already. The hellebores that are behind me, joyous, joyous, joyous. Paper white narcissi coming in from the Isles of Scilly. And the spring flowers will arrive soon, but we'll have a little period of winter tide, which I love. Then we segue into spring, then summer, then autumn, and on we go with our cycle. And as I'm creating something using amazing peonies and beautiful sweet peas, I'm thinking to myself, oh, imagine what this will look like with dahlias or daffodils. So seasons help me reinvent, and
Mm, yeah.
we work in amazing venues. We're so lucky. Our history here is extraordinary. We did a dinner last month in Hampton Court Palace within the banqueting hall that Henry VIII will have eaten in. And we had a drinks reception within the room where he will have talked to the guard that looked after him. To walk through those corridors of an evening when the public have gone, when we're putting our flowers out, is one of the most privileged things I do, but it's also so inspirational because you really feel the space, you feel the scale, the history. There's no tourists, there's no guides, there's nobody talking, there's no distractions. You're literally in these spaces alone and the walls talk to you. It's extraordinary and so inspiring to me to be able to work in those places. I just adore it.
That gives me chills practically because it's amazing.
It's extraordinary, and in the banqueting hall where we were working, the walls are hung with tapestries, so we have incredible regulations of working in all these spaces. So you can't have any standing water, you can't use berries, you can't have fruits, all for very good reasons about protecting the ancient fabric of the building. But I was talking to one of the curators because we're followed by a curatorial team to check we behave properly and we don't do anything that we shouldn't, and things had to be carried and placed a certain distance from the wall so they wouldn't topple and hit anything. And I was talking about the tapestries within that room, which are all these gorgeous muted colors. And she said to me, one day I'll show you the back of them. They're the bright colors that they were when they were made. And that was a revelation to me because, of course, since Henry VIII commissioned them, they've been hung on the wall. So the back of them is the perfect color because it's never seen the light of day. The front is faded, but the back is the proper, genuine colors. And the idea that blows my mind that I can go and look at a tapestry that's in those bright, bright colors that Henry VIII will have seen. That is just unbelievable.
I'm speechless. That is so cool. I mean, it's like, um, I think that's one thing when it comes to a lot of our monuments and our history of the U.S. We have no grasp of the depth of history that you get to live among and work in and be a part of. And I have to, I'm kind of jealous.
We're very lucky. You have an amazing climate within some parts of America that I adored when I was filming Full Bloom. It was extraordinary to know that you can literally go from April to October knowing that you are not going to have rain and you can plan an outdoor event. That is unbelievable to me, who's worked in the UK and Europe, where we always have to have a tent, we always have to have a wet weather plan, and it's so annoying.
It probably really inhibits your creativity.
Yeah,
What am
it
I going to
can.
do with this tent?
Yeah, exactly. Tents are always ugly and we have to make them magical. It's so
uh,
annoying.
Absolutely. Well, so talking about Full Bloom, um, I was really excited when this show launched because uh, I don't know, the whole format of the show I thought was really good. I really appreciated it. Even the changes that were made into the second season. It was interesting. So, a mutual friend of ours, Kanan,
Yeah.
who was on season two. It was so funny because I was working part time during the pandemic in a wholesale house where we were both living at the same time. And I was in there, and he comes in, and he was having to pick flowers, and he's like, I can't tell you what it's for. And you can imagine Kanan. That's painful. That's really painful to not say what it's for. But I looked at him and I saw what he was, and I saw his list, and I said, "Are you?" And I didn't even say it because I didn't want him to have to, plausible deniability. And I said, "I bet you're trying out for something, aren't you?" And he was like, maybe. And so I was so excited when he made it and I don't know, I just thought the entire the participants, the judges did such a great job. And I was excited to see a lot more cut flowers, not as many plants and things.
It was I was hugely thrilled with it. I've been approached in the UK and from other production companies. Probably I must have made 50 sizzles for 50 different flower-based programs, many of which are a competition and a lot of which want to have built-in jeopardy, which drives me potty because anyone who works with flowers knows there's a whole bag of jeopardy there. We don't need to build it in. When we're working in California and it's 50 something degrees and you're creating flowers in full sun, that's enough jeopardy. So it was a long, slow process of talking with the most amazing production company and brilliant team and working out what the challenges would be, because I had been on the Netflix Big Flower Fight program,
Yes.
and I felt it was a missed opportunity because it was all plants. Almost everything was plants, and I wanted to see use of more perishable cut flowers, and I wanted to see proper floristry skills being demonstrated. We can all make something magnificent if we're given $50,000 worth of flowers and a whole load of frames and labor. We can all do that. Anybody and everybody can do that just because there's the abundance of flower. So that's why I was so involved and so happy to work alongside both Maurice and Elizabeth, my fellow judges, who were so different in their approach to floristry,
Mm.
but so aligned with me in that we wanted to see proper floristry skills. I'm going to cause a few ructions here by saying I hate a glue gun. I'm sorry, guys. It's not floristry. It's not floristry. It cooks flowers. It uses single-use plastic. A stub wire, a real wire, will degrade. It doesn't need to be plastic coated, but also proper floristry is a way of manipulating flowers rather than just gluing them onto a former. And I was so excited to make sure that that was at the fore. And each of those individual challenges really, really tested the florists. And one or two of them massively struggled because we were giving them proper floristry skill tasks that they had no understanding of. And I found that slightly sad because it does mean that things just become a bit generic if we're not careful. So it was exciting to see the individuality. And I think both winners in both seasons showcased exactly how individual and unique they were, and in turn their work was. And I think that was what made them so special and made them the winners ultimately.
Sure. Well, it was, I appreciated the challenges, especially the individual challenges, I think, because you really could see where people grew through those processes, grew through learning on how to think outside the box for some of them, or how to adapt their own style to what, whatever the the task was. And so I don't know. I think I felt like educationally it was good for our industry too. I'm curious, was there any advice that you like maybe off camera or something that you had to give people? Because I mean, that can be overwhelming to all of a sudden I have this incredible candy store and it's totally up to them.
That was exactly, you've hit the nail on the head, Scott. And you're very kind to say that you felt it was an educational, had an educational element in it. And I feel I was very keen, and Maurice is adamant that florists are artists, and he's
Mm.
correct. He's absolutely correct. And he was adamant, and he would push that point far more than I would. He and Elizabeth were far better at pushing things. I was always very restrained in English. And he would drop the name of Beyonce, but I could always top him because I'd talk about Her Majesty the Queen, of course. So he used to go, dang it, every time, every time. And we were so different, such different characters, but we had the most extraordinary chemistry and synergy.
Yes.
And none of what you see is fake. That is us. We were the most luckiest people in the world to be put together and paid to do those hours and hours of work, because we laughed and laughed and laughed, and we loved being amongst all those incredible florists. We learnt from them, they were learnt from us. And the thing that they all struggled with is scale. And it's the same wherever I work. I'm involved with some of the Royal Horticultural Society competitions, and getting people to understand scale and work in broader, bigger brushstrokes is so difficult. Even if you say to them, you've got $100,000 of flowers and you've got 10 helpers and you've got a 5 meter by 5 meter space, it's so hard to get them to think big. And that was where we had to have some off-camera asides that were timed absolutely legitimately. So each of the three judges would speak for a period to each team or each individual and give some feedback on mentoring, just to say,
Mm.
this is TV, think big, make it big. And it was just so rewarding to watch the joy in their eyes when they saw what they were capable of doing, because
Mm.
lots of them are working, I'm lucky, I get big budgets, but a lot of people are working making a $50 bouquet day in, day out, and it's overwhelming to have all those flowers. But when you saw the magic they realized they could make with all those flowers, that was joy, joy, joy.
Mm. Wow, that's incredible. I'm so thank you for sharing that, because that's a transformation that they'll carry on, and many of them have. I mean, you see some of the things some of these contestants have done or florists have done afterwards, that they just continue to kind of rock our little floristry world, and
Exactly.
that's incredible.
It's been great for them to have a platform, and it's been great for them to have a slightly elevated platform, and to give them individually each a platform. And I do hope that none of them felt hard done by or any animosity, because we really did think long and hard, every single element of judging, everything that each of them did, both as teams and as individuals, was scrutinized by us. And it would come down to minutiae sometimes, to
Mm.
have to lose one of them, which is brutal and ghastly, but it's the name of the game. But I hope that they felt we were kind and mentoring. I always wanted people to feel uplifted by what we said, rather than crushed and damaged by it.
Mm. Well, you kind of, I don't know. I guess watching it, I really felt that. I didn't feel, like sometimes you'll watch some of these music competitions and the judges are very harsh and almost uncaring. And I especially think, as you've said, and more recent, that florists are artists. And I feel like, sometimes it's a big deal to put yourself out there and pour your soul into this creation. And of course, then you're only opening yourself up to ridicule or
Yep.
critique because you're on a show. And then I don't know, I mean, I really felt for some of the people. And then sometimes you just felt like, no, don't do that, and then they would do it. And then but you guys, I felt like you guys handled that really well. You were very constructive and caring in your approach.
Well, I hope so. And also, I always wanted, I don't think there's a day I didn't learn something from nearly every one of those florists. And they taught me, and I taught them, Maurice, Elizabeth, we all taught one another. But the really joyous thing, and it's what I say all the time, is florists are good, kind people. They helped one another. They became such a close knit team. It was really, really difficult because, of course, production companies need a little bit of jeopardy. They need a little bit of argument. They need a little bit of animosity. And they struggled because they were all so lovely to one another and so kind and helpful and uplifting. It was just lovely to watch.
That's great. Mentioning, and I'd love to talk about this if we can, scale. That is a huge thing. I have had the honor of working with some amazing designers who really approached that with a gift. And I think you're right. It is a true struggle. And a lot of times when floral designers or florists are selling these big events, they they miss the mark, I think, because they're just not used to pushing themselves. And how, like, I'm just curious, what would you, how would you teach scale? What would you say to help them through learn better how to approach that?
How rude a word can I use? Can I use an F word on this? I'm going to
Well,
use it and you'll bleep me out. You
that's
can bleep
right.
me out. You have to have the fuck off factor. It's the fuck off factor wherever you are. And if you're in a large space, you want to create something that makes people walk in, note it, stop and stare, and then take in the whole scale of everything. Unless you're creating flowers in a white box, which is very rare in London and in the UK, because most of our spaces are incredibly historical and huge. You're putting a statement piece into a space that's making your statement or the statement for your client, but you don't want it to overwhelm and jar with the space unless that's exactly what you want it to do. So it's a really difficult layered
Mm.
process of working out. And I always say, people will say, I'm in this enormous space, but there's a really ugly pair of air conditioning units each side. So I'm going to have to put flowers in front of those. And I'm like, why bother? Make one massive fuck off statement over there where my eye line comes when I walk in the door. I'm never going to notice those air conditioning units each side. So don't spread your budget like thin butter on some toast everywhere. Have one big dollop of butter on your piece of toast. And oh my gosh, it'll just be one mouth bite sensation, but you'll remember it for a long, long time. Never underwhelm, always overwhelm. And even if it's, if you've got $500, think about spending every dollar you can on one type of flower. The impact of that is so much more powerful than if you're trying to add in an orchid because you want it to feel expensive, some lilies because you want it to feel luxy. Those sorts of things are where you just end up creating a slightly bigger version of what you do regularly. So the moment you're given the freedom to make a proper statement, try to think of the most extraordinary things, but do not go onto Pinterest. Do not start doing Google searches and images. Go into the space and just absorb it and imagine. Don't look on Instagram at other people's things and what they do.